John and Ken Show. John Cobell and Ken Champotes. KFI AM 640, live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. We were just talking in the last segment about how polling shows that a lot of these woke ideas are confined to a narrow fringe. I just found something else, about critical race theory being taught in schools. Manhattan Institute did a survey of the 20 biggest metro areas. And by 54 to 29, people want to remove critical race theory concepts from K through 12 education. Things like white privilege or systemic racism, those concepts. 54-29. Black parents want it removed by a margin of 54 to 38. And that's in the big cities, not even the suburbs, not even the rural areas.
Right.
And then one other poll, Harris poll asked, do you think schools should promote the idea that people are victims and oppressors based on their race? Or B, should they teach children to ignore race in all decisions, to judge people by their character? And Americans favored the first idea, 63-37. No, I'm sorry. They favored.
No. I hope not.
No. They favored
the latter.
The latter, 63-37. 63% said promote the idea that children should be taught to ignore race in all decisions and judge people by their character. 63% of Americans agreed with that. So this is not going to last.
This movement started out with, we should teach the children not just, American history because it is dominated by white European men, but we should teach them about other cultures, which I don't have a real big problem with. But now it's turned into this, you got to teach them that America's racist and that white people hold the power and privilege.
And that by being white, you're automatically an oppressor. And by being black, you're automatically a victim. And that's what they're telling 8-year-olds. You're a white 8-year-old, you're an oppressor. You're a black 8-year-old, you're a victim already. I mean, that is so toxic and cancerous, too. But people are rejecting this. It's just,
you think that's literally what's going on in classrooms? Or literally they're saying that? Or
actually, there have been cases where they have literally said that. I've got a long article here. It's probably too long.
I just remember that picture from that LA Unified School District classroom that came out a couple of months ago where the guy basically had a poster that the police are pigs and they're killers, and he also had stuff about America's white to racist.
Yeah.
He actually had the posters in the classroom, which convinced me, he is literally teaching that.
Yeah. No, they actually have kids stand up and they say, do you understand that because you're white or because you're black, you are either oppressor or victim? Right. It's indoctrination. This is Andrew Sullivan's column. They filter all the education through the critical race theory lens of race and identity. They mathematics, literature, philosophy, and science. They're not fields of study, but they're products of white supremacy. And you're supposed to remember what position you hold in society before you even speak. Like oppressors are not supposed to speak. They're supposed to concede the floor to the victims in the classroom. And even in some workplaces, they're teaching this. To grade and discipline, to remove any group differences, to abolish standardized tests because there are different group outcomes, to end gifted education because it's allegedly racist, to hire and fire on identity grounds, to teach children that sex is not binary and can be chosen, and open restrooms and locker rooms to both sexes, and to keep parents at bay and in the dark about it.
I thought the idea was that, we're wonderful, unique people, but this movement seems to be all about making us the same to the point where everything has to be the same.
Yeah.
Right? We're all going to have to end up at the same job, the same pay.
And so what was Russia and East Germany and all of Eastern Europe about? That was the philosophy. And everybody lived in the same little box apartment.
We're all just workers, right?
That's right. And all the workers got the same pay. And, China goes through this now as well.
Yeah. You're no better than me.
This is an old philosophy. And it's just like everything in life, it cycles back. And they thought this time they could sell it by intimidating people, by screaming racism if you disagreed. They couldn't do that in Russia. They couldn't do that in Eastern Europe and East Germany. They can't do that in China. They had to be their way to enforce order was through violence, right? People just disappeared in the middle of the night and thrown into a gulag. Here, to enforce it, they screamed racism, and it gets amplified by the media and social media.
And I'm thinking that, we finally look like we rode the defund the police wave, or it's fading now. We even have the mayor of Portland we just talked about who wants to add $5 million to the budget. This wave will just ride out soon, too. I got to believe, because these people are a vocal but distinct minority of the thinking out there.
Yeah, and you can't argue with
them.
them.
That vote on Tuesday was partially a repudiation of their
You're not going to win it. You're not going to win a debate with them. You just have to overwhelm them. I read a piece by Christopher Rufo we've had on the show many times, and he's run a long series on all these woke programs at AT&T and at Walmart. And he said the 6 ways to beat this. For one thing, you don't try to win the debate. You have to win the fight. To win the fight, you have to flush all these politicians. You have to get rid of the school boards, right? You got to get rid of the people in power. You're not going to convince them. You can't hold a debate and be nice and polite. You simply have to go and vote in November and flush the system. Because when these crazies are out of office, the new people will be different.
Yeah, and he's been, he actually goes on these dopey progressive woke cable news channels to debate this stuff.
Yeah.
And they act like he's paranoid. He's making this stuff up. There's no such thing as critical race theory teaching. You're exaggerating. That's the kind of things that they answer him with.
Yeah, because that's
it's your own construct.
That's their tactic. In fact, Andrew Sullivan wrote about this here. They think critical race theory is obligatory for teaching children, but they pretend that in the classroom, they don't actually use the phrase critical race theory. But they have things called Roadmap to Equity in Virginia, where they want conversation on social justice, systemic inequity, disparate student outcomes, and racism in our school communities. That is the prism in which they want children taught.
Right.
The Department of Education embraced critical race theory in 2015, arguing for the need, they wrote this in the memo, to re-engineer attitudes and belief systems in education. In 2019, they set out a memo that explicitly endorsed critical race and queer theory as essential tools for teaching high school. And it's our professional obligation to teach with social justice, system inequity, disparate student outcomes, and racism as the filters that are used. It's our responsibility. It's our time to double down on equity strategies. I mean, and this all came from radical professors, radical writers, people who are on speaking circuits now, making a lot of money on speaking engagements and books and television appearances. And it's a whole industry now.
Yeah, I didn't realize this critical race theory really originated in the mid-'70s in the writings of a bunch of legal scholars.
Oh, yeah. They've been knocking around, again, in faculty lounges at universities for years. And the George Floyd incident was the moment that everybody jumped in and said, okay, now society's on its heels.
Right.
Everyone's intimidated. We just start screaming racism, and we start indoctrinating the children. And you know what exposed this was Zoom school. Around the country, a lot of parents saw what their kids were being taught for the first time on the kitchen table, 6 hours a day. And it's like, holy crap, where did this come from? Parents had no idea. Worst thing they did is close the classrooms and create Zoom school. If they let the kids come into the classrooms, most of the parents wouldn't know that this is going on. They would have got away with it for a while longer.
Well, this crowd is frustrated because they're looking at many years, decades of social programs and spending, and they still believe that the gaps exist. So there has to be another way to close the earning gaps, the achievement gaps between the races, achievements. So this is what they've decided to do. They've got to start to indoctrinate children that we have a racist society.
Right. That you are racist because you're white as a little child. That you are a victim because you're black as a little child. Can you think of anything more horrible than that? To convince the next generation that you are divided among oppressors and victims. You have no other value. Oh, the people pushing this stuff, really, there should be a special place in hell for them.
Speaking of kids, it wasn't long after they announced that the vaccine's available for 5 to 11-year-olds that cities around the country are trying to bribe children. I just find this amusing. New York City's offering $100 debit cards, trips to the Statue of Liberty, tickets to sporting events. Chicago's offering $100 rewards to children who are getting their first shots. It's like, wow. I guess they took a look at some of the polling and realized some may be a little slowed.